a Playlist original.
From producer Jerry Bruckheimer. On July 9th, the pirates are coming.
You best start believing in ghost stories. You're in one.
Johnny Depp, Geoffrey Rush, Orlando Bloom, and Keira Knightley in a Gore Verbinski film.
That's interesting.
Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl.
You like pain? Try wearing a corset.
Starts July 9th.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster with your hosts Gaius and Jackson. Very fun anniversary episode. Thank God.
So much fun. Yes, finally a movie of upbeat tone. Although I'm sure we'll both comment on the tone of this movie like as it comes, but still very much a lighthearted, fun family adventure movie. And God, I know that we feel the same way, but this was just such a fun revisit. I was ecstatic that I'm so glad you guys voted on this movie for us to cover, because I had a blast seeing this movie again.
That should be noted. This is the first usually we pick all the anniversaries and it's based on like, oh, I want to do that one, or he wants to do that one. Some of them are just like, hey, they're popular, I guess we have to do it. But we decided offline one day, I was like, hey, we should like open up the anniversaries and let the listeners pick which one we do each month. So like we had 4 for you guys to choose from. Coming off of Fruitvale Station, which I love the movie. It was a good conversation and just a heavy movie, right? I think in retrospect, I'm kind of glad, because I was surprised that like Saving Private Ryan was in that group of 4 and they didn't really get any votes. And I didn't really know if that was because like maybe they didn't want to hear us talk about a serious movie like that, or they thought the other 3 would be more fun. And then it ended up getting broken down to Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, and Bad Boys 2, because those when it was broken down to the 3 movies, it was really close and tight between those 2. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it again. We're just gonna put Pirates up against Bad Boys 2, and it was still pretty close, but Pirates won by a smidge. This is the first one. This is the first one that our listeners has picked for us to do, and we're gonna do this each month. We're gonna select like 3 or 4, depending on like how many anniversaries are in the month and how many we're actually doing ourselves, for you guys to pick from. But I'm glad you guys picked a definite crowd pleaser, and this is a fun one. I honestly hadn't watched this movie in a really long time.
Okay, I was curious about when you last saw it.
Of course this won't be a discussion about the sequels, but I will say that the reason I kind of not distance myself, but I hadn't really watched it in a while, is because I didn't really love the last few. It was like, it kind of was like beating a dead horse, I think, at that point. Still, even though the quality of these movies dipped, they still were hugely successful internationally. Like, this is still probably one of the biggest franchises out there financially.
Yeah, certainly.
And go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, this series is best enjoyed as a trilogy. I think the first, Dead Man's Chest, At World's End, this is how the Pirates movies are destined to be. Like, I can tolerate 4. I haven't really seen anything past then. I don't think 4, I guess, held up nearly as good, but I think the first 3 are honestly bulletproof. I love the Pirates trilogy, as I like to revisit it as. But I've returned to these a few times over the years, actually. So I was probably 2 or 3 years off my last watch of Black Pearl. Maybe a little more than that. I gotta say, it wasn't, not since the pandemic, but it wasn't too long, but still found myself enjoying this a lot more than I even remembered I would. And God, it was such a blast.
And I will say I was even further off my last rewatch of it so far that I forgot I didn't own it on Blu-ray. I watched it on DVD, which, you know what? It's like, I have it right here next to me. For like a DVD copy, it's like loaded with fucking special features. There's like a ton of stuff on here. I didn't really go through all of it. I did watch the blooper reel, because I wanted to see if it was actually a funny blooper reel. And some of it was pretty funny. You could tell they had a really good time making it. Even for a DVD though, the DTS 5.1 surround sound sounds really fucking good if you have like a good surround sound system. Like, I couldn't tell if like, wait, is this movie up too loud, or is this just a really good mix? And I didn't have it up that loud. It was definitely like rocking the subwoofer and all the speakers. So
nice.
and this movie is very sound heavy. So it was pretty good for that.
To this movie,
oh, that too.
He's a pirate score, that blasted full volume would have been so amazing to hear. I had my volume cranked pretty. I don't have surround sound, but I had the volume on full blast, and I was living for the moments where that score would come on, like when Jack is swinging on the ropes around the ship, and it's going full display. Man,
it's just so epic, dude.
So iconic. It is. The score is perfect in this movie. One of my favorite parts.
The score is so good that I had to look up. I was like, wait, who did it? Because I was like, in my mind, it sounds very Hans Zimmerish, or it sounds like it'd be one of the greats that did it. And
he did the sequels.
Yeah, he did the sequels, and I've never heard of Klaus. I guess Klaus Badelt is the guy who did the music. So kudos to him, because I thought you were someone else. That's how
I thought
epic the score is.
Did it too. I didn't realize he wasn't attached to the first movie. It was kind of like a Mandela effect moment for me today. I was like, can't wait to listen to Hans' score when I'm watching this movie. Then I looked it up, and it wasn't him.
I just clicked on his name. I guess he is known for his collaborations with Hans Zimmer.
Okay.
So I guess they're
there you go.
Easily, incredibly influenced. But yeah, he's done scores for The Thin Red Line, The Prince of Egypt. He helped do a little bit with Gladiator as well. And then and then also, of course, on his own, known for Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, Equilibrium, K-19, The Widowmaker, Basic, and the TMNT animated movie that came out in 2007.
Those are sick. Okay.
But that main Pirates theme feels like it's a Hans Zimmer score. It feels very Hans Zimmerish in its scope. And yeah, I'm glad that you guys ended up picking this one. Bad Boys 2 would have been fun as well in its own way, because that would have been. But this gave me an excuse to watch this, because it's been I think since I watched this one. From start to finish.
Long?
I think I'm 10. Yeah, about 10 years since I watched it from start to finish. I think of course I've caught if it's on TV, I'll snippets of it, and we'll watch some of it and then change the channel. But from start to finish, it's been 10 years. So this was a fun
awesome.
revisit. It took me back to see it in theaters. I think I mentioned it on one of our other episodes that I was not excited to see this when it came out.
No, yeah. I do remember you covering that.
Not at all.
I don't blame you.
Before I get to that, I'll just in case no one has seen one of the biggest movies of all time, Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl is a 2003 American fantasy supernatural swashbuckling film directed by Gore Verbinski, produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, known for a lot of his work with Michael Bay, The Man, and Tom Cruise, actually. This is the first film of the Pirates of the Caribbean film series, and it stars Johnny Depp, Geoffrey Rush, Orlando Bloom, and Keira Knightley. The story follows pirate Captain Jack Sparrow and blacksmith Will Turner as they rescue the kidnapped Elizabeth Swann from the crew of the Black Pearl, captained by Hector Barbossa. Barbossa's crew attempts to retrieve the final pieces of a hoard of Aztec gold to break the curse laid on them when they stole it. I guess to take it back to when this came out, I was pushed to see it by a group of friends because, as you know, this is based on a Disneyland attraction theme. It's not really a ride. It's you basically sit in the boat and it takes you around.
Okay.
Like you're at sea basically, and you see all this kind of fun, kind of the stuff you see in the movie a little bit. There's certain stuff that's kind of lifted directly from the ride, but I mean the fact that they made a full-on film based on a bare bones theme park attraction is
with not much story.
Impressive.
Yeah, I think so. Especially what they made out of it, the characters they developed too, which I'm sure had nothing to do with the ride, but just what they were able to do with so little was fantastic. And I read too that this was one of the last rides Walt Disney himself helped develop, and it came out in the 60s, mid 60s, which is pretty. I didn't realize it went nearly that far back. I would have assumed this was a ride from the early 2000s, but yeah, pretty neat.
No, been around for a long time. I remember our senior year, one of our last trips as a senior class was to Disneyland, and
Sweet.
all the girls love this ride. It was just it's not. I mean, it's nothing much going on, but it's just it's funny because when the ride starts, it's right next to this restaurant that oversees the ride. So if you're at the restaurant, you can actually look down into where the ride goes and everything. Mm-hmm. And it's maybe 4 minutes, maybe if that.
The
of
whole
like going
ride?
through this kind of going
Oh,
through
wow.
this like different areas of like, you know, the Caribbean.
Right.
But and I guess it's like if you were to go to Disneyland, it'd be like an iconic thing to go on. It's definitely not a thrill ride by any means.
No.
But the movie was so popular that they incorporated different aspects of the movie into the actual theme park attraction. Like they actually included Captain Jack Sparrow eventually, kind of a likeness of Johnny Depp
Right.
in that as well. Why I wasn't so excited, I'm not a Disneyland person. I prefer fun. Like in our area, we have like Six Flags Magic Mountain, which has like a ton of roller coasters and actually fun rides. I also like Universal Studios is fun because it has the whole movie connection.
Yes, that would be
and
the
that's
spot.
the fun. There's another place called Knott's Berry Farm. Also, a lot of thrill rides. Disneyland is overly priced and it's not as fun. I feel like it's fun if you're a kid, but actually, I have a handful of friends who are either big kids or they just love this place so much. They have like season passes, and they've tried to convince some of us who don't have them to buy them. And I'm like, no, it's so expensive. And I was like, I don't like it enough to like get a season pass, and I wouldn't want to go I used to have friends that would go like 3 times a week. That's how much they love Disneyland. And so when this movie came out, so this is like 2003, so we were a year out of high school. They were still going to Disneyland a lot, and everyone was like, "Oh, they based like this movie on this ride," and I was like, "I don't care." I don't.
I can
all right, what
completely
else?
picture your like apathy to going to see this and be like, "Okay, guys, I guess I'll like just tag."
Oh yeah,
and
the
see,
most were
but-
like. And I think there were maybe 10 of us that went. It was very reluctant. Like,
okay.
I don't really want to. It was a big group. I was like, I don't really want to go. And they're like,
sounds
oh,
like a
come
lot
on,
of
come
fun.
on.
Yeah.
And also, I wasn't into. And then, by the way, the industry also wasn't into like pirate, like swashbuckling movies at the time. There wasn't like a ton of movies like this. And the last one, I mean, this came out when I was young, but like 1995, this movie called Cutthroat Island came out, and led by Gina Davis and Matthew Modine. It is in the Guinness Book of World Records as one of the most like the biggest flops of all time.
Oh wow! I know the genre had died by the 90s, but I didn't know. I can't name any other pirate movies beyond these, to tell you the truth. I wasn't around for that trend.
Now, Cutthroat Island was directed by my boy Wendy Harlan, who he directed A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, which is fun Nightmare on Elm Street movie. He also directed Die Hard 2, Die Harder. He directed Cliffhanger. He's directed some fun movies. He was dating Gina Davis at the time, and I guess the Cutthroat Island had like a ton of problems during its production, but it is listed as one of the biggest box office bombs in history, with losses of $147 million at the time of its release, which made. Wow. Honestly, the pre-release stuff for Pirates of the Caribbean was insanely low. It wasn't a lot of people thought it was going to flop because of that exact reason. Because also and ultimately the reason I ended up going to see it was Johnny Depp, because I was already a fan of Johnny Depp before this movie. He was already a cult movie star at this point. He wasn't a mainstream Hollywood studio movie actor. Yeah, I mean, up to this point, his highest grossing movie was Sleepy Hollow, which did really well, but it was nothing on this level, whatsoever. He had never been in a huge hit of this size, so he wasn't a proven thing. So that's why the industry was like, okay, that's not going to work. Orlando Bloom, he's coming off of Lord of the Rings, but he's not like a star. But I mean, girls like him, so maybe that works, right?
His 2000s, he would have been, I'm sure, a superstar by the end of them, because he went from Lord of the Rings, 2 of them, then this, and the whole Pirate series, and Troy, all within a few years of each other.
All in a row.
Run he had. Oh my God. What a
I guess it's one of those things too, where if depending on your thoughts on him, maybe he was like he oversaturated the market. He was like everywhere for a little bit during that period.
Come across that way for sure. I don't get that feeling, but
honestly, rewatching the movie, he's perfect for the part. He exudes this kind of very. It's like this young exuberance. He'll do anything for you. Loyal. He's like that kind of that's all he exudes that in his personality. And then of course I hadn't seen Bend It Like Beckham, so I didn't really know who Keira Knightley is. So I didn't know anyone beyond Johnny Depp. Right. I knew who Geoffrey Rush was, kind of from he did a movie called Shine. He was nominated for an Oscar for the movie nerd in me knew who Geoffrey Rush was, but that's not enough go.
This is a great
Really
role
be
for
like,
him.
oh, I want to see this.
What about Jonathan Pryce? What was he? Was he big at this? He had been older.
He was. I think he had been. So Tomorrow Never Dies at this point. One of the Pierce Brosnan, James Bond movies.
Oh, right.
He was in Stigmata. That's what I knew him from at the time too. So not really him, but another name other than Johnny Depp that was like, all right, maybe this might be good. Gore Verbinski had directed the Ring remake in 2002, so he's coming off of that. So I was like, all right, that's good. Yeah, very big switch, right? And there's nothing about that made it seem like, oh, like you can do this. But I was like, all right, cool. I relented and saw it, and I couldn't be more happy to be wrong that it was, because it turned out to be a really fun movie, and it was pretty evident within like the first 10 minutes or so that it was going to be fun. It wasn't like, oh, let's see if it's like speeds up. It was like, oh, this is actually, I think we got something good. I think
the opening is great at setting like the story up and like how these like particularly Will and Elizabeth meet each other and sets up like their dynamic. But the story really begins, I think, when Jack's entrance into the movie, and I think this tone is perfectly set when the camera angle is like on him, it comes over from his back, and then you see him and he's like leading this this grand ship.
Should be entrance, like
so good. Yeah, and then the wide angle to see that he's on this tiny little dinghy that's like sinking was just brilliantly captured the tone of that character. It's one of my favorite. I kind of forgot about his introduction in the movie, but so well helmed, just amazing.
Yeah. Now, this is really interesting because this role was originally written for Hugh Jackman. They really wanted Hugh Jackman.
Wow, did not know that.
And then that was not going to happen. They pivoted to Johnny Depp. Wasn't a popular. I mean, everyone's kind of like Jerry Bruckheimer kind of fought for it. Because he was like, I think he'll be really good. And of course, Johnny Depp. Famously, Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones was his huge inspiration for.
That's right. I forgot about all that.
Drunken, lovable Captain Jack Sparrow. You know what? I know there's like individual stuff we can talk about, but Johnny Depp is a big part of why this, I think, ultimately became so successful in the end.
Absolutely.
I tried to watch it this time from an angle of like, all right, let's not just focus on him. Let's see if I can like. Let's other things that stand out the most, right?
Yep.
This, even though I was like years away from like the last time I watched it, I actually did finally feel like I watched it more as an ensemble rather than just him. Even though he does steal a bulk of the movie, like he steals a lot of scenes, right? But it really felt like
to this watch.
Yeah,
as well.
It felt like I was like, oh, like Keira Knightley has some fun moments in here, and Orlando Bloom has some fun moments. Like Jonathan Pryce has fun moments. Like everyone has like some stuff to. Really celebrate. And of course he has the showier part of everyone in the movie. It's kind of interesting too, because like you can't really think of it I guess the way I did. Like back then, like Johnny Depp was already proven himself to be a really good actor. Like he was pretty diverse at that time, and people like Tim Burton had already utilized all his little weird
this is right
eccentricities a little bit. Like they already knew that Johnny Depp was like a little left to center and he could play just about anything. But it's interesting find the world discovering that who he was. Like I feel like this movie he gained like a plethora of new fans that were like, who is that guy? And it was so strange as his first movie is in 1984. He does Nightmare on Elm Street. He's on 21 Jump Street for like 3 or 4 years after that. He was working consistently in the early 90s, into the 2000s. He did Blow right before this. I mean, like it wasn't like he was.
He'd been acting for 17 years at the time this came out. It's crazy.
But you would have thought that like we discovered someone new the way people treated it.
Yeah.
But I think this for a lot of people this was them discovering him for the first time, and while that was fun, it was fun to kind of share that with people who were like, oh, I was like, well, dude, like fucking Edward Scissorhands and What's Eating Gilbert Grape. This guy's been like killing it for
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is like probably my favorite performance. Yeah.
I mean, of course you weren't, didn't see this movie then, but like knowing what you know of his career before Pirates, like is it interesting to you that like this is what it took to like push him into the mainstream?
Well, I guess I hadn't really considered it before because like obviously like this would have been because I don't have any memories of seeing this movie when it came out. I was only 5, but I remember by the time Dead Man's Chest came out, I had a whole Pirates of the Caribbean themed birthday. I saw it in theaters like with my cousin. Like I was very much. This was just to preface before I go into this question, like. And this wasn't an original thought by me, but something I heard in a video today that I just thought was too good not to share, but because it's so true. But I feel like this is my generation, or even like people a little older than me, that when this movie came out, this was kind of like our Indiana Jones or Star Wars, like the Pirates trilogy. I thought so too. I was like, and it's so true because it was just because Jack Sparrow and like these movies are kind of like a once in every 15 or 20 year sort of series. You know what I mean? So but anyway, to get back to the question, I did obviously the point that I was watching these movies, didn't know anything about Depp's earlier career, but since have seen plenty of his stuff pre-Pirates. And I guess I am kind of surprised. He does come across as more of like a nuanced sort of role, like a guy that's kind of like choosier with his roles. And this seems like the one that would have been his most mainstream appealing movie to casual and cinephiles like alike. So I guess I'm not too surprised, but in the sense that I think I would have imagined that he was probably a well-established and like taken seriously actor before these movies. Oh, is that the case? Do you think?
Yeah. This was interesting because even 20 years ago, I was surprised that he wanted to do it because it felt very different, not just different in sense of it just felt too popcorn Hollywood. Major studio release, and he had success with something like Sleepy Hollow, and that was like a stroke of luck, right? There's a combination of Tim Burton being a really big director, and crafting something that was kind of scary, kind of fun, right? And I don't think that was intended to be as a huge of a hit as it was. Like Pirates felt like, even though the industry kind of didn't have faith in it, it felt like it was manufactured to be. You got Disney. It's based on like one of their a well-known ride from their Disneyland theme parks. It felt too Hollywood for him, but I guess like maybe he didn't really reject that, and it was just like, hey, if the role's good, then I will make it work, and not it wasn't necessarily about it being too much of a Hollywood movie, I guess. But it did feel very surprising at the time that he was involved in it, because it was like,
he signed on.
Wait, yeah, and like I'm just reading this right now, and I want to read it before I forget. Is like Jerry Bruckheimer and Gore Verbinski said they had confidence in Depp partly because Bloom would be playing like the kind of Earl Flynn type to like his kind of like straight to like Johnny Depp's like kind of over the top personality. But they said that Disney executives were confused, asking Depp whether the character was drunk or gay, and Michael Eisner at one point proclaimed, "He's ruining the film." Even Bruckheimer was slightly uncomfortable at moments, they said. Interesting. With Depp's decision, they said it was Depp's decision to actually cap his teeth with gold and all that. And then Johnny Depp says he later recalled, I said, look, these are the choices I made. You know my work, so either trust me or give me the boot. And luckily they didn't.
Very luckily they kept him on. I feel like a lot of this movie's success is owed to Jerry Bruckheimer. His fingerprints are all over this movie, and he was at a streak, particularly in like the 90s and the 2000s, where he was just producing gold. Like, I wish there were more like him in Hollywood, because he had just so many great movies under his belt at this point. And I think for the most part, like, lent a lot of creative freedom to the people making the movie, which was great, which I found particularly interesting now, knowing that there wasn't a lot of faith that this movie was going to perform well. You would have think this one would be one tightly managed by the
with everyone behind it. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, like, it's like, I mean, this movie had a budget of $140 million, which I guess at the time was probably kind of big, but like now, now today's standards, when we have movies that are like 350 million, it's like, oh well, that's pretty. But for for a genre that, you know, the last big one they had was a huge financial failure, it was a huge risk. But it is weird to think that, because you have, like I said, you have Disney and Bruckheimer involved in it, and the thing with all those components there, like the industry was like, we still think this is gonna flop. Like, we don't think this is gonna, because this is also during a time 20 years ago, it didn't matter what actors were like in your movie, whose name was above
right.
the title in your movie. And none of these people, I mean, of course they became household. It's weird to call Johnny Depp a household name after this, but like they all became like household names after this movie. I mean, Keira Knightley took off after this in a huge way. Orlando Bloom continued, like you said, to take off after this. And it really does, like, on paper have all the components to like be a hit. But I guess, you know, you have these, you know, that one glaring example. Well, that, I mean, of course, I mean, it's Gina Davis, Matthew Modine. I mean, I know it's 1995 with Cutthroat Island, but it's a different beast. You know, they don't have like Disney behind them. Even though I read that Cutthroat Island, because Gina Davis led it, a lot of people in the industry think that's why studios were so reluctant to let females lead their like action adventure films after that. And I was like, God, like you get one bomb, and they're like, no more.
Take it away from them. Yeah, that's it. Cut off. You're cut off.
But yeah, you know, I'm glad you bring up Bruckheimer, because Bruckheimer, to me as a producer, has made the popcorn movie an art form, where it's like, it's, you know, he knows how to crank out these kind of like, not as an insult, like check your brain at the door, have a good time, enjoy like 2 hours with your friends at the cinema, and it's going to be a really good time.
And still be wild. He makes a wildly entertaining film. I think he just was the best at knowing what the audience wanted, while towing the line of like serious and comedy and enough lighthearted, goofy, like child-like innocence to the movie. But it wasn't enough that, like, I don't feel like I'm watching a kid's movie when I'm watching Pirates of the Caribbean, but it still feels very much like a movie for kids in a sense. It's weird. Like, it's dark. It's got, I mean, there's not much for language, but there's like lots of like killing and violence.
There's innuendo. There's some innuendo in the movie.
Tons, absolutely.
There's a lot. I mean, I think it's interesting because Keira Knightley has recently said that, because she was really young when she made this. Like,
she was like 17,
not even 20, 17. She was young.
17, 18,
17, 18. So she felt, she said, slightly sexualized. I mean, she's the only female with a huge part. There is Zoe Saldana, who's in the movie as one of pirates on like Captain Jack's ship and stuff, but like Keira Knightley has like pretty much the lone main female role, and she said a little bit that, you know, how they used her. I mean, I watched it, you know, for this. I saw if there were some jokes and innuendo, but I didn't really feel like they were made at her expense to make her look bad. And then she kind of counters that by not just being a damsel in distress. She actually has moments where she's strong, and she's not like, they are going to save her, but she can also handle her own too, which is something they expand on in like the other sequels that she's in. She becomes less and less of needing of help. But I didn't really view it as like, there were jokes, but I didn't really see it as the film was sexualizing her. But I'm also not her, and I wasn't, you know, in it that young or in that kind of environment. So.
To add on to it too, like, even if there were instances of that, like considering like the nature of the types of people that are being portrayed in this story, like dirty, filthy, scummy pirates, like these are the type. This is where you sort of encounter, like, if there were to be innuendo or like jokes made at like the woman's expense, it would come from people like that. You know, it kind of makes sense just sticking to like the historical accuracy of how the pirates are portrayed. But I didn't get the sense that, again, her perspective trumps ours, of course, but I didn't feel like it came across that way at all. I agree with you. And even the fact that, like, she's being rescued, like she does, like you mentioned, she has moments where she is capable. She's just vastly outnumbered. You know what I mean? So she puts up a good fight for what she's up against, and I feel like they do her character a lot of justice. But
she has like a few good moments. But the one that I was cracking up at is when she was trying to get Captain Jack's crew to like go help him and Will. She's like trying to tug that boat, and like she pulls it, expecting her all to pull with her, and they're like, no, like. Like, and she's basically like, oh, like, what about like the code and all this other stuff? You know, these are more like guidelines, and then it just cuts. You think like she's giving them this like motivational speech to go with her, and it's just like quick cut of like her on the boat. She's like, oh, bloody pirates, and then she's like so pissed off. But I thought that stuff was really funny, and I don't know, she has a few other, like the stuff at the end too, where she pretends to faint to like distract the whole like hanging of Captain Jack Sparrow and all that. Like, she has some really good stuff in it. I'm glad that she's not, and she, you know what, she doesn't come off like, I know she was young when she made it. She has like a real maturity in that role. Like, I don't really buy it as like, you know, her coming off young. She was very kind kind of well beyond her years.
Well beyond her years. Looks youthful. I think that's really where like that her age is the only that's the only part where it comes into play. Is just physicality. But you're right. She's like acted way beyond her years. Her character. It's kind of ambiguous how old she really is, which I think adds it is for the movie's benefit and her character.
Yeah, I guess her and Will are supposed to be around the same age. I'm guessing because like when they were kids, they seem like they're around. Like when the movie opens, they seem close to the same age at least.
And there's a close little throwaway line that says that was 8 years ago. So you can assume that maybe they're 18, 19, something like that.
See, I'm trying to see if I buy Orlando Bloom as.
I don't buy him that old, but I do buy her. Yeah.
Yeah, like Orlando Bloom is like deep in his 20s. I don't know. Yeah, he looks like it at least. What was some stuff that stood out to you, like rewatching it this time around?
I guess I would say I do remember thinking how well the effects hold up. There's definitely moments where you can tell this is 2000 CGI what they had to use, but I think there's a great blend of practical effects and computer effects, which I'm sure comes down to Gore Verbinski and still holds up to this day. There's a lot of sequences where, for those that maybe are less familiar with it, there's the band of pirates that are Jack's former shipmates are bound by this curse that leaves them undead, and when they're in the moonlight, they're like their true undead self kind of comes out. And so there's scenes that are fought like in the moonlight where they're bouncing in and out of like beams of moonlight, and their regular selves are transformed into like their skeletal dead selves. And I think it was a really seamless blend of the CGI. Yeah, 100%. That really stood out to me. We have better CGI in this movie from 2003 than we are getting in 2023 from some studios. Like it's beyond me. Yeah. And this isn't the only exception by any means. There's lots. Like this was kind of a golden age for the use of CGI where it wasn't like reliant. It wasn't like overdone. It was just kind of still experimental and still blended practically. And I think the Pirate series, at least the first three, are a great use of the blend of CGI and still holds up.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the whole shifting between like the moonlight, that because that was really seamless. I mean, they utilize it a lot in the climactic battle towards the end of the movie. Yeah. And like when I was watching it, like watching it go from in and out of like there'd be like shadow then light, and it just you never feel like you watched like an effect kicking in. It just looked real. And exactly. I also love, and I forgot how much I like this scene because it really hits when Elizabeth Swann is like on the boat and she sees like the undead crew basically for the first time, and they're like kind of like moving around all like funny like that, and like you're seeing that too for the first time yourself with the score like kind of blaring. Like that whole scene is so good and holds up really well. And it's kind of, I mean, not scary by any means, but still like kind of like, oh shit, I wasn't quite expecting that just yet,
No, I do have. This probably wouldn't have been when it came out in theaters, but I do remember as a kid, like revisiting Black Pearl, and there were some sequences in this movie that, as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, like terrified me. Like particularly the scene where I can't remember the pirates' two names. The two goofy ones, one with the wooden eye and his.
Oh
friend. The scene where they're trying to find her, like when they're going through the governor's house and she's hiding in the closet, and they're calling out to her and saying they're gonna find her, and then you get the shot of him looking through the peephole.
Peephole. Yeah.
Holy shit, that scene used to traumatize me as a kid. There's a few scenes like this that are genuinely frightening, especially them all done up in like when they are all undead in the moonlight. To a kid, I can see this being just the right blend of like scary and adventurous. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
But
I also I really like I like all of Johnny Depp's interactions with Orlando Bloom because I really think it's Orlando. I think Orlando Bloom, I mean, has to play this kind of straight role of Will Turner, who doesn't really have like a lot of funny, like outlandish stuff to do. But that's the part, right? He's it's a knight in shining armor. I guess that's the best way to describe him.
That's right.
But like he does play off of Johnny Depp really well. Like their interactions are like a lot of fun, and their first encounter is a lot of fun. And their first little like sword fight duel thing is really funny. And you already see in that first scene this kind of uneasy, like, oh, this could eventually become a very not typical friendship, but like like
something resembling that.
Have
each other's back.
But of course, it's Captain Jack Sparrow, so you don't know if you can completely trust him because he keeps waffling back and forth.
He's a scallywag.
I love also when Captain Jack Sparrow, he saves Elizabeth the first time, and it's clear that he saved her, but he's a pirate or whatever.
Right.
And Jonathan Pryce, who's her father, just blurts out, "Shoot him!" And she's like, "Father."
Yeah.
Just like, I just thought that was really funny.
I agree. How the whole dialogue around piracy in this movie is like, I think representative of how it would have been tackled back, because I think this movie takes place in like the early 1700s. I think it's mentioned at one point.
Yeah, I actually think 1720 is when. Yeah.
But it's also like done up comically as well. It rides the line. But the thing I think that stood out most this watch around, that I didn't really maybe fully appreciate in previous viewings, was the stunt work in this movie. There are some wicked stunts in this movie.
And you're right. And what I appreciated is, sometimes you can tell when they swapped out the actor for the stunt person.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that a lot of it looked pretty seamless too, where it looked like it was mostly them. And I'm sure there were a lot of stunt people doing this stuff, but for the most part, felt like the main actors, I feel like I was watching them.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they did do a lot of training, swordplay and all that stuff. They needed to learn
for sure,
especially for the close-up shots and all that. But yeah, we talking about the effects and all that, the stuff that they did practically, meaning a lot of the stunt work, the fight scenes, kind of just the traditional kind of swashbuckling battle sequences that they have. That's the exciting stuff. I thought they handled that really well. I agree with the stunt work being much better than I remembered it.
It was just a standout to me. This the first big one being when Jack kind of outwits those two guards on the ship, and I can't remember exactly how he sets it up, but when he kind of cuts the cord and rides the rope all the way to the top of the mast of the ship and swings around.
And you have that one really funny close-up shot of Johnny Depp swinging very it was really great.
That looked like a lot of fun to film.
Yeah.
For
sure. But the stunt work is impressive and holds up 20 years later. I mean, it doesn't feel dated. Where I was that struck me when I was watching it too, that it still was pretty top-notch stuff and exciting.
They get bigger and bolder too, within the next two sequels as well. There's a lot of great action set pieces in the sequels that kind of far outweigh this one. This one, though it's a big Caribbean crossing swashbuckling adventure, it's still in nature in comparison to the two movies that come after it feels very small scale. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, because I think with the sequels, it was all right, well, we'll talk about how successful the movie was, but it's a matter of what did we get sequels because we needed them or because this made money. But if you're gonna make them, I feel like they were we need to expand the world and make the world bigger.
Right.
And you're right. The second one, by the time you get to the third one, it's this is a big sprawling all over the place kind of thing. And it's weird to call a $140 million movie intimate, but it is more intimate than its two sequels or any other sequels I've followed.
Certainly.
This, which I think is why people really enjoy this one more than the ones that followed it. It really is simplistic in its approach, even though it's supposed to feel grand and adventurous and big.
Mm-hmm.
At the bare bones of it is a very simple adventure story, though. It's not too.
That's right.
It's not too sprawling compared to the sequels at all, which I liked actually. I mean, seems like there was a lot more, even though there's a ton of action. There's a lot of focus on the character work too, and just getting to know our leads and all that, and kind of sticking with them. Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. In retrospect, because if I had any complaint about the sequels, and I know you like the first two that follow this one,
right?
They get. I mean, this movie's long, and then I felt like the sequels were very long.
They approach 3 hours, don't they?
It's okay, guys.
This one, the first is 220, but I think the pacing was fantastic.
Pacing's great. It never felt long. It never felt like I was I'm bored.
That's
even during it moves really fast, and even when there's no action, the interactions between the characters moves things along in a really fun way too. I mean, it doesn't hurt that you have a really fun central character like Captain Jack Sparrow, but he's also not in every scene. So I mean, it still has to rely on the others too.
That's right, and they do a fantastic job competing for screen time with Johnny Depp, who it's funny because I very much am loving the movie when he's on screen, but yet I'm not like yearning for him to be back. Not on screen, you know what I mean? Exactly.
And that's how I felt about it watching this time. Like I said, like I really wanted to watch it. I was like, oh, like let's watch it more as like an ensemble and not so much as a Johnny Depp showcase. Right. And I think 20 years ago and maybe a few viewings after that, I definitely watched it as a Johnny Depp showcase because I had no skin in the fight for like Keira Knightley other than like, oh, she's pretty, and then I had no skin in the fight for Orlando Bloom or anyone else. So it was like, all right, this is Johnny Depp show, and in that funny way, I mean, even though eventually I was like, all right, now you guys all love him. So like I said, we've all liked him way before this, right? But it was cool to watch like other people discover him now, and then they were going to watch his other stuff after that. Right. And after this movie hits too, almost everything he did post this for a few years was made money. Yeah. Like, I mean, I don't think there's any way that like Secret Window makes money the way it did if he's not hasn't done Pirates, where it's like, oh, I want to see this because Johnny Depp's in it. Once Upon a Time in Mexico, the Desperado sequel he did like after this, that movie made as much money as he did because it was like, oh, let's see it. Want to see Johnny Depp. Before this, like, he just didn't have like he was kind of like a cinephile kind of actor. Like, oh yeah, we like him. Right.
That's kind of the impression that I get too. Like thinking back, like to do my best to put myself in the shoes of somebody who knew his career before Pirates. Like I wouldn't have, but that makes sense. And then I feel like this movie kind of brings both audiences together, like people that love mainstream Johnny and are kind of put onto his earlier, more like cinephile type roles. But let me ask you this though: who beyond Johnny Depp, who gives the best performance in this movie? Do you think?
I think it's Geoffrey Rush. I think his Barbossa is pretty fun. I realized it more watching it this time. I mean, it's almost like I want to say competing. It's almost like he's also maybe doing equal scenery chewing along with Johnny Depp, but he's having fun. You can tell. Oh yeah, and their stuff together is really fun too. Like they kind of bounce off each other with some really fun dialogue in a few scenes. Yeah. And then like Geoffrey Rush is also he's good with like everyone. He's good with Keira Knightley in the movie. He has some fun like stuff. They have a great
their dinner scene and how that ends. Discovering the ship, all the crews on deck. Yeah. Love that scene. Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. So good. But yeah, it's interesting to think because I'm glad you asked that. Like who else is good in this movie? They're all good. I think everyone does a great job, but yeah, Geoffrey Rush does it. If not for Jack,
really good, solid villain too. Like he's not just like. It's fun because like I never felt that he was like a huge threat or like him and his crew were a huge threat. There was gonna be. It wasn't like our heroes weren't gonna win. I never thought of him as a villain in that regard, where it's like, oh, he's causing a lot of like strife for our heroes, but he was still like a fun presence and like really. And I'm glad they bring him back too, like in
yes,
some of the other ones. Yeah. So like he was fun.
He's more like, I wouldn't give him anti-hero status. That's how I'd kind of like classify Jack Sparrow, but like Barbossa, especially more like after the first one, is kind of more just like a lovable and like a frenemy sort of like role.
Right.
More a villain. You know what I mean? He is, I guess, by all matters, like a villain in the first movie, but again, not very like threatening one, just kind of someone who's like a pain in the ass to Jack Sparrow.
Yeah, of course. It's interesting too because when they in the sequels, of course they have other villains at that point. So if you still want to include Barbossa, I think you kind of have to make him a little bit of a anti-hero in the same way maybe that Jack Sparrow is, where it's like, oh, like he's bad, but like
he's an untrustworthy pirate.
He can still help out, but like he's still bad. He's still out for number one, but
that's right.
If need be, he can same thing with Jack Sparrow, who will always be out for number one, even though like across the first three, especially, there is this sort of like interesting bond between him and Elizabeth and Will, even though it's not very a traditional like we totally trust each other. But it's still interesting to watch. Like deep down, he's like a pirate like him found these people that are like, oh, they're not so bad. And like with him, they're like, oh, a pirate's not so bad either.
It's exactly. I love
that train of thought. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I especially I was laughing actually out loud watching the scene where Elizabeth gets fake drunk with Jack on the beach to kind of like establish her plan to like blow everything up to get like a signal out so she can get rescued. And that scene 20 years ago played so well in the theater too, because it's the whole afterwards when he wakes up and sees her like throwing all this stuff, and like everyone in the theater was just laughing. He's like, "Where's the food, the chilies, and the rum?" He's just so like upset. And then she's like trying to explain. He's like, "But why is the rum gone?" Like everyone quoted, "But why is the rum gone?" For a very long time post that movie opening that summer. Just another funny Johnny Depp moment in this. Which I can't tell if it was written or if it's just him improvising. Like I feel like a lot of it might be him improvising.
That's a good point, because there's a lot of lines that he would have throughout this whole series that you could tell like he's having enough fun in this role. You could totally believe it's him just going off script, but it's also so well written that I wouldn't be surprised if this was lines that were fed to him as well. I have no idea. You're right. It's hard to find that line.
Well, there is one line where they're talking about like who came up with like the parlay, that whole thing, and then I think he says like the French, and well, they're like in the blooper reel he gives different answers, so I think he did probably improv. He said something about Latin America and all this other stuff in like in parts of the bloopers, but it was I do love how he just like says it just matter of fact, and you're kind of like, oh, that's kind of funny. And I do love how, like you said, the use of kind of like the pirate stuff, like the whole parlay thing. I think it gets used like 3 times. where
right.
Elizabeth uses it, and there was like right, and then like he uses it. Yeah, really done in a really fun kind of way too. I don't know. I liked all that stuff. It was just
one scene in particular that I just found myself laughing at or appreciating more so than I ever had on previous watches is when there's a scene where he's finally, after escaping numerous times, he's finally captured, like while he's still in Port Royal, and brought to I think they call it like the Brit, or no, that's on the ship, but like the jail in Port Royal. And you see the prisoners trying to goad the dog with the keys in its face. Which always, as a kid, like kind of like that always bothered me, because I don't have a great understanding of how this was done, but like it kind of looks like the key ring is like drilled into the dog's face, or is it just hanging in its mouth? I couldn't really
I think
tell.
It's hanging in its mouth.
As a kid, I thought it was inserted in the dog's like nose or something, and that always bothered me.
Which probably like frightened you as a kid.
I was like, oh, that would be so painful for the dog. But anyway, when the prisoners are trying to get the dog to come over so they can take the keys off, and he's sitting there in his cell all alone, kind of like telling them how pointless it is, and the dog's never going to listen to them. And then later that scene, like the scene is kind of mirrored where Port Royal is under attack from the Black Pearl, and their cell gets blown open by cannonball, and they're escaping, and then he realizes like there's nothing else for him to do, and he gets a bone and tries to get the dog to come over, and he's like frantically like, now, even though he was like making fun of them earlier for such ridiculous antics, he's now resorted to that too. I found that scene really funny. I
think so too. I think it works really well. I just saw something since you were talking about Geoffrey Rush and him being viewed as a villain or not in this particular movie. It said that Verbinski approached Geoffrey Rush for the role of Barbossa as he knew he would not play it with attempts at complexity, but with a simple villainy that would suit the story's tone. And Rush said he felt that he was playing the unsung hero of the film, who only dreamed about lifting the curse and living as a rich rogue with his prized pirate bride, and developed an intricate backstory for the character to playing him more convincingly. Also, originally Rush was only the second choice for the role behind Robert De Niro, who turned it down because he turned it down because he expected the film to flop.
Could you imagine Robert De Niro?
I mean, I don't know.
Like, I can't. No. I think I would love that, but like again, like I don't think there's another Barbossa other than Geoffrey Rush as hard as that is when comparing somebody like De Niro. I would have loved to have seen De Niro involved in this series somehow, though. That would have been awesome. But no one is Barbossa but Geoffrey Rush.
And Orlando Bloom, not the first, second, or third choice for Will Turner.
Before him, because I know a lot of people competed for Jack, but I've never heard anything about.
Tobey Maguire, Jude Law, Ewan McGregor, someone named Ben Payton. I do not know who you are. I'm just gonna see you. He's
Jude
a British
Law,
actor.
I can really see as Will Turner. I think him and
Bloom at that time. At that time, so Jude Law he was big post The Talented Mr. Ripley, so that's like 98, 99, I think. Yeah, still early enough. I mean, and then so he would have been looking age appropriate. I think he might be a little older than Orlando Bloom, like a little, maybe. But he looks young. I think you're right. They are very much cut from the same like We're Pretty British Club.
Yeah, that's right. I could totally see him as Will Turner though, but I think Orlando Bloom knocks it out of the park. He's great as Will.
Also considered Christopher Masterson, Christian Bale, and Heath Ledger. Tom Hiddleston also auditioned for the part too.
Tom Hiddleston would have been cool in this role. I think Christian Bale would have been great in this series.
20 years ago? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
they all Bale do in the 2000s. What's his 2000s?
So it's an American Psycho, right? And like the early 2000s.
No, I think that's 2000 on the dot, isn't it? Or is it 2001?
Yeah, I think it's 2000 on the dot. So yeah, I mean,
Batman Begins 2005. Yeah, so right around that time. Okay. You know what? It's on. I'd like to have seen him in a role, but I don't know where I would have cast Christian Bale. I don't think he's Will Turner, but I don't know.
And then Keira Knightley was so impressed with Verbinski was so impressed with her audition that he cast her. He had not seen Bend It Like Beckham, and she, of course, was also a stand-in for Natalie Portman in The Phantom Menace for the Queen Amidala stuff.
Okay,
but she had not been in anything huge, and he hadn't seen her in that. He just really liked her audition and thought she was perfect for the part, which I couldn't agree.
She's a very expressive actress. Does a lot with her face and her voice,
even in stuff after this. I've always thought that. I've always thought that about her.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think her career has cooled a little bit. I mean, it's not like she's not in stuff anymore, but it seemed like this period, the 2000s, was really good to her. She was nominated for an Oscar at one point, and
for which role?
I think Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, okay.
She was nominated for that, and I know that after the third Pirates movie, when she was really done with it after that, I think her and Orlando Bloom, like, I think they have cameos in like the last one that came out.
Ooh, I don't even know. I haven't seen.
But she was pretty done. And I think Orlando Bloom, I think it was at this point where they're just like, I want to do other stuff, like any actor when they're like a part of a big franchise that becomes maybe bigger than them. And in the case of Orlando Bloom, he was in 2 big franchises. So it has to be kind of difficult. I don't know. I feel like if I was an actor and I was like, yo, you can make like 6 of these, I will be back. I mean, milk it. I mean, I wouldn't be like, but I guess I understand the whole like starving artist. Like, I just want to do more. I mean, we've heard like Zoe Saldana and Elizabeth Olsen talk about the Marvel stuff. And they're like, oh, I missed out on like so many good projects because of these big movies. And I think Keira Knightley, maybe between Lester and Orlando Bloom was in that boat after the third movie came out, because they filmed the second and third movie concurrently with each other. They were filmed back to back, and that has to be a pretty huge endeavor for, these are not, I imagine, not easy movies. They're probably fun, but
especially
definitely not easy movies to make.
The other two are way bigger scale than this one, so I can imagine that would have been a long shoot. But in comparison, just comparing them to Zoe Saldana and Elizabeth Olsen, I can buy into them feeling they miss out on roles because they've been attached to these roles for much longer than the first 3 pirate movies come out only in a span of 4 years, don't they? Like
4 years, yeah.
Or
7,
2003, 2006 and 7. I think, is it 6 and 7 or 7, 8?
I think 7, 8.
Okay.
I think it's 7, 8.
Okay, so 5 years, and that's not too long to put out 3 movies to be in that role, and they both.
I'll correct myself. So, yeah, 6 and 7. You're right. 2006 and 7.
Span. And they're also, all those actors are doing stuff in between these roles, but I know a lot of the MCU artists who have been in these roles for like 10 years or close to, like, haven't necessarily had the chance to put out, very demanding roles, but it was this would have been a hot time for all the people involved in Pirates, like their careers. This, like, back to what you said earlier, definitely launched a lot of them into the superstardom. But I would struggle to recall any recent Keira Knightley performances. I can't even think of anything.
Yeah, man.
Am I sleeping on anything? Like, what do you?
I know she did. I think she was on a Hulu limited series recently, like either earlier this year or late last year. I think it was about the Boston Strangler. But after Pirates, actually the same year as Pirates, she was in Love Actually. It was a very small part. But she is probably in one of the most like iconic scenes of the movie, with the whole with the whole side stuff. Yeah. That's right. It's and she started a number. She did more period pieces after Pride and Prejudice. That's what she was nominated for Best Actress for in 2005. She did Atonement in 2007, The Duchess in 2008. She was in Domino, very underrated action movie. It's actually pretty good. She did Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit in 2014.
Okay, I
She's
would
in
have
the
seen that.
Intimidation Game.
Yes,
Intimidation Game was
Yes, I love that movie.
Oh, she was actually nominated for Best Supporting Actress for that too. I totally forgot about that.
And still, though, this is 10 years ago now, or next year, I guess. What else? That would have been the most recent thing I think I've seen her in, unless I'm.
I feel like Intimidation Game might have been the last one.
I love that movie so much.
Yeah, I mean, like, but probably her choice to kind of take a beat because it doesn't seem like she entirely. Oh, she was in a holiday comedy called Silent Night in 2021. I did see this movie. Okay. It's a very it's like an apocalyptic like Christmas comedy about the end of the world, and it actually is pretty good. I totally forgot she was in this. It's a smaller movie, but I would highly recommend it. It's pretty funny. Very out of nowhere, like kind of like weird, but it could very well probably end up in your like list of like offbeat Christmas movies if you don't want to watch like the traditional stuff.
I'm not a Christmas movie guy. Like, there's very few.
Oh, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do for Back to the Blockbuster when Christmas comes, man?
I'm sure you'll have to put me on some stuff. We'll have to maybe engage the audience a little bit and get them to put some stuff out because, like, I'm so lame when it comes to most holiday stuff other than Halloween. I just am not. I love the holidays, but when it comes to targeted movie watching, I don't know. Christmas. There's not been a lot of Christmas movies over the years that I've really resonated with, but this year might be different though. It'll be the first Christmas season podcasting
on the podcast.
Yeah, so that'll be
your heart will go 3 sizes that like
fair enough. Yeah, I would love to revisit what Jim Carrey's. That would be. It's been a long time since I've seen that, but
the Grinch.
Yeah. One thing. Sorry, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say one thing I learned today that I, of all these years, did not know. Just speaking back to, I got on this train of thought when you mentioned Keira Knightley's Oscar nomination, but I did not know that Johnny Depp was nominated for this role. Thought that was pretty cool.
I guess it's a good time to talk about it because, again, not only did the movie make him a mainstream force, but like this was like critically acclaimed performance too. A lot of critics really. Or like there are some critics that are like take him out of it, the movie sucks. There are a lot of people that felt that way, that he steals the entire movie.
I see what you're saying. Okay, I misinterpreted what you'd said. I thought you meant like not wanting him in the movie, like it sucks.
If you remove Captain Jack Sparrow, then like it's just a kind of a basic standard adventure film. The character is so offbeat and not like anything you've seen in the movie up to that point. I mean, I guess like it's so unique that if you do remove him from it, it's just kind of a basic, standard pirates movie.
I think there's great legs of this movie without him, but he is what makes it great.
Right? Yeah, I think he's kind of like the central, like kind of glue that holds it together. But there is stuff around him, especially watching it in a different way this time, like paying more attention to everyone else. But yeah, he kind of came into that award season. Nominated, he won the Screen Actors Guild Award for outstanding performance by a male actor in a leading role, which made a lot of us think that he could have won the Oscar because I was like,
wow.
Sometimes those votes kind of go hand in hand. And then he got Best Actor nominations for the Academy Award, BAFTAs, and Golden Globes as well.
Oh boy!
And it was his first ever Oscar nomination. He'd been nominated for Golden Globes in the past for like What's Eating Gilbert Grape, Edward Scissorhands, but he had never gotten the big one. And then he got another Oscar nomination, I think, for Finding Neverland, like maybe a couple of years after this one. It's interesting because he does the same thing in the sequels, and he never got that same kind of critical acclaim for those. But I think it's once you see it once, it loses its surprise, for the audience. And I don't know. I can't try to think. Yeah, I mean, I guess it wouldn't garner that same kind of awards attention the second time around and the third time around, especially not the fourth or fifth.
No, definitely not. I think he could still have earned it in the sequels personally, because I think he brings so much to them. But oddly enough, I'm seeing that he was competing against Jude Law for Cold Mountain at the Academy Awards that year, which is interesting. And
who did he lose to?
Sean Penn in Mystic River, which I actually rewatched a few months ago. And that's a hard battle. That's a strong year.
I've been wanting to use that for a deep dive so bad.
That would be a wicked
for Mystic River. Yeah, it's so good. I think if you remove Sean Penn, I would root for Johnny Depp. I think at the time I was rooting for Johnny Depp because I hadn't seen Mystic River yet. Right. And if I could, that wasn't like 20 years ago. I was like, let's see Mystic River. But
Well, here's another great one though. Bill Murray's nominated for Lost in Translation that year as well. That is a strong year.
It's a very strong year. And Johnny Depp was certainly the fun nomination of the bunch.
Yeah. I love that he squeaked in there. I've never known.
I think it's one of those things where the Academy is like, see, we're cool. we nominated the fun role that, so yeah, it made him a big name in a lot of ways, financially and even more so critically. He already was critically acclaimed, but finally getting, because unfortunately Johnny Depp, great actor, but he was always in movies where someone else kind of stole the shine a little bit more. Like What's Eating Gilbert Grape, Leonardo DiCaprio got nominated for an Oscar for that.
Yes, at 13. Crazy.
Yeah, Ed Wood, Martin Landau wins the Oscar, and Ed Wood.
Yep.
Johnny Depp was there. Yeah, I mean, he was like ably supporting his fellow castmates.
I saw Ed Wood. I don't know if I ever mentioned it on the podcast, but I did see that for the first time a couple months ago. I thought it was fantastic. But you're right.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, but I guess he's because Martin Landau won for supporting, right? And Johnny was lead. Yeah.
The lead. Yeah. And honestly, he was nominated for Edward Scissorhands. I still think he should have got an Oscar nomination for Edward Scissorhands. Like he was nominated for a Golden Globe.
Oh, okay.
That movie screams Golden Globe, but
yes, it does.
But he, when I watched that movie now, I was like, that is such a dedicated. I mean, I guess early proof how dedicated he could be in a role, and he's so good in Edward Scissorhands.
I have never seen. I've only seen.
Oh, what?
I know. That would be one I'd really like to get on. Like, it'd be a good September because it's not necessarily it's.
Well, we kind of make it a Christmas movies. We gotta make it a Christmas movie because the last 20 minutes takes place during Christmas. So we're like, it's kind of a Christmas movie.
Okay, maybe that'll be a Christmas watch.
And then it has kind of whimsical, it feels very and that Danny Elfman score is just so perfect. Like if you ever just hear it makes more sense in the movie, but the Ice Dance is probably one of the best pieces of movie music I've ever heard. It's so good.
Okay, wow, I never realized how well acclaimed that movie score was. I definitely need to give that up. I love his collaborations with Tim Burton, some of my favorite duo in Hollywood. So it's a shame I haven't seen it. And when is Scissorhands? Is it early 90s or late 80s?
It came out in 1990. So it was so it was important for Johnny Depp to do it because he was on 21 Jump Street and he kind of rejected the whole teen idol thing that show recreated for him. So he was very much once he linked up with Tim Burton. I mean, because he did Cry Baby and Edward Scissorhands back to back. So it was he did a John Waters movie and he did a Tim Burton movie. And it was as far as you can get away from whatever 21 Jump Street was.
Right.
And it was very clear that this guy was not going to be, the pretty face. Well, it's funny because he was known, at least in the early 90s, even through the early 2000s, a lot of girls liked him. He wasn't a bad looking dude. But he really did reject the kind of even though he kind of gave off the kind of bad boyish, pretty boy persona, he rejected being just good looking. He wanted to be known for more than that.
Hearing all this right now, he really reminds me of Christian Slater. I feel like they have a really comparable career.
Yeah, I think they were friends too in real life.
I think you're right, actually. Yeah.
Christian Slater had that problem. It was funny too watching early Christian Slater stuff. It's that guy could act, but I always feel he probably was known for being good looking more than being a good actor.
He also sounds exact. Next time you watch a 90s or 80s Christian Slater role, because aside from this, just side note, I watched back-to-back. Cam and I watched back-to-back Slater movies. We watched Heathers for the first time for the two of us, and then I showed him
that's a great movie.
Oh man, it was fucking awesome. And then I showed him True Romance was his first watch, and during both of those movies, I couldn't get over how much like Jay Baruchel he sounds. If you close your eyes, I swear to God, there's no distinction.
He really does.
He sounds really just like Jay Baruchel. It's hilarious.
Dude, you know what's funny about Heathers is that I always thought, because I love Mean Girls, but I was like, if Mean Girls could go harder, it would have been Heathers.
I don't think there's Mean Girls without Heathers, honestly. I'm not supposed to say that, but it feels formulaic of that.
Right. And it's if Mean Girls would have been rated R or something, I don't know if they could have thought that could have been. And
so many similarities.
And Mean Girls is a classic of like that of the generation that it was for, but Heathers is I'm glad at least you're getting in some really good movies, even though Edward Scissorhands isn't one of them.
Thank you. Yeah, I do plan on getting that in this year, but Yeah, no, in between anniversary episodes, I like to keep busy with my watches, and that was actually so a little off topic still, but that movie newsletter that I sent you, Please Consume, which anybody that is interested, that's actually where I came on to Heather's was from that. That was a movie they recommended one day, nice. So kept that on the list, and yeah, really enjoyed that one. But Slater's the man, and him and Johnny Depp are again kind of like Jude Law and Orlando Bloom. They kind of just feel like different, same style, just different font. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Brad Pitt almost fell into that a little bit early in his career. He got out of it. I think it helped with like 12 Monkeys, like doing those kind of and sleepers back to back, because this was the guy that was like Legends of the Fall and like long hair and like
Legends of the Fall.
I think I don't know if Brad Pitt purposely did it, but like he chose the right roles to kind of be like, oh, this guy's just not just good looking. And I know some people will hear this and be like, oh, it's so hard being them, but I think it is a stigma for certain dudes in Hollywood. When they look a certain way, it's like, oh, can that person actually act though? And they're known more for their looks, and then maybe that's why they got a lot of their parts. But each person that we've mentioned has proven themselves to be a fantastic actor in their own way.
Absolutely. I
still think Christian Slater didn't really, it was cool that years later he got Mr. Robot. I think he got a Golden Globe for that, and that was cool. Sweet. But like he seemed like he should have been like, bigger?
Yeah, 100%.
Like he could have ruled the 90s a bit more, and maybe the
Joe
early
Blow
2000s.
has a great video actually on Slater's career that I watched a few months ago. Yeah, and I really liked it. And that honestly put me on to him.
Yeah. What could have been?
Exactly. I love the he gave us, so love that guy.
Yeah, for sure. So you said you heard about some of the people that were up for Captain Jack Sparrow. I'm reading some now, and I'm just
give me some names. I only heard that it was a sought after role, but I didn't actually hear any names attached. But who did we get?
So at first, Disney wasn't sure if they wanted to release this movie in theaters or direct to video. That's how unsure this genre was at the time. At the time, they were interested in Matthew McConaughey as Jack Sparrow because he resembled Burt Lancaster, who had inspired the script's interpretation of the character. I could see it.
What
totally see it.
There's an alternate universe out there where we got Matthew McConaughey
where he is Jack Sparrow.
I want to see that so.
I want to go there. I want to go there.
Send me there. I'd wake up in that universe tomorrow
because I don't think he'd be bad. Actually,
I don't think he'd be bad either. It wouldn't be quite the same charm, but I would love to see what he would have done with the role.
Yeah. If they chose to release a direct to video, Christopher Walken or Cary Elwes would have been their first choices. If it was directed. Oh wow, that's interesting. Jim Carrey was also considered for the part of Jack Sparrow. But the production schedule conflicted with Bruce Almighty, so he couldn't do it. And then other people considered for the role were Michael Keaton as well. I don't know if I can see that. No, I'm trying to chew in my head.
I can see Christopher Walken as Barbossa maybe. But
yeah, I can see. Oh, but can you change his signature Christopher Walken voice? I can't do Christopher Walken. But everyone listening to this, you know what he sounds like, and just imagine him reciting some of these Barbossa lines.
That would be hilarious. I would love to see him try that
out. God, this movie ran into so many roadblocks. It said they were very excited to adapt Disney rides into motion pictures, but The Country Bears, which was released in 2002, flopped, and Michael Eisner attempted to shut down production of Pirates of the Caribbean because of that, because he felt that because that flopped, this wouldn't do well. But Gore Verbinski told his concept artist to keep working on the movie, and he would convince Eisner to come visit and see some of the stuff that was being created on set. And when Eisner saw it, he was astonished and told them to keep going.
Attaboy. Good call.
Wow, that's crazy that he was just like, this flopped, shut it down.
Man, what
studio execs think like, fuck this. This one thing failed. We can't do it. By the way, you can just, I guess you could, scrap a $140 million movie. I like how it would just be that easy to just shut it down.
Like, I just don't see, I couldn't imagine what we would have missed out on if just a couple of things had gone differently. It's just it's kind of like you got to love about the industry is how on a thread so many productions are at a certain point of their filming or their production when anything really can go under at any moment, like, and what we would miss out on.
Yeah.
But,
I didn't know this about some of the filming. Like some of it was filmed in St. Vincent, which is like the primary location
right
of the movie. But a lot of the sets and stuff when they couldn't film on location were done at the Port Royal and Rancho Palos Verdes, California, which is like 20 minutes away from me. And then Governor Swan's palace was built in Manhattan Beach, which was 5 minutes away.
I've heard not know that. That is crazy.
I didn't know that Pirates was done there. I knew that some of the sequels were done in Palos Verdes. I didn't really pay attention to the first one though being done.
Okay,
there.
Sweet.
That's pretty cool though. Manhattan Beach gets used a lot in film and TV. Oh, you know what? It's interesting about the music. Hans Zimmer served as a music producer on Pirates of the Caribbean. So, I mean, I guess I'm not sure how much he could influence score. I mean, it was composed by Klaus, but Hans Zimmer served as a music producer on the film.
I'd be curious what the difference in the role is.
Yeah, because it sounds so like that score sounds so much like his.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy. Every time I think about that score, I'm always like, I think it was him. And
I can't tell you how surprised I was today when I just noticed that Hans didn't do the music for the first movie, because like that He's a Pirate track is attributed to Hans in like the other movies and I think on like Spotify and whatnot, but not in the first one.
Well, maybe it's because it's his team. I mean, I don't know. Like they're making it seem like Klaus is a part of Hans Zimmer's like team, even though they're crediting the score to him and not Hans Zimmer. So I mean, maybe it's just like a collaboration overall.
It must be to some effect, yeah.
But Alan Silvestri was originally going to be hired for the score because he had worked with Gore Verbinski on Mouse Hunt and The Mexican, and he was originally hired to write the score for The Curse of the Black Pearl. But he parted ways due to creative differences with producer Jerry Bruckheimer.
Oh, that sucks. Alan Silvestri is one of the greats.
Yeah. Again, I think the score on this is
yeah. I wouldn't have changed.
You know what? Is it thought of in like, I've never really kind of looked into it. Is it thought of in like the cinephile community as like one of the best movie scores? Because like it really, at least that theme alone is very like, I think stands up as some with the other iconic movie
now
scores.
That you mention it, I never hear any praise in like any sort of like cinephile communities for the score of this movie, and to that effect, I'd say it's criminally underrated because it is one of the best well-fitting scores of any movie ever made ever. Like especially that one theme, like Jack Sparrow's theme is fantastic too, but that big iconic Pirates of the Caribbean theme is as good as a film score could get to match the movie. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah. Another interesting thing about this movie too, because you said that you not surprised, but it's like it's a kids movie, but it's a little violent and all
some
that
dark subject matter. Yeah.
This was the first movie released under Walt Disney Pictures banner to be rated PG-13 for action adventure violence. An executive at Disney said she found the film too intense for her 5-year-old when they were screening it. But they said nonetheless, the studio was confident enough to add the Curse of the Black Pearl subtitle to the film in case sequels were made. So even though they thought like, hey, this might flop, they added that just in case they could make sequels, and they thought it would attract older children to the movie, not just being a Pirates of the Caribbean film. Gore Verbinski did not like the new title at all.
he just wanted to keep the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Well, it's right. He said that he wanted it to be really small and unreadable on the poster. So I guess compared to like the font of this, it's really small.
Certainly, so I can't even see it.
So that's what he wanted on the cover.
I think the second part of the title like works to establish the distinction.
Yeah, I think it goes well with the movie too.
Yeah, me too.
Overall,
it's pretty aptly named.
Yeah, I thought so too. I don't know, man. This is just like a really fun, just like solid rewatch, adventure movie rewatch. Like I said, it went by so fast, even though it's 2 hours and 20 minutes.
That's right.
It just like and like I said, looking back on it, like not wanting to see it when it came out.
Yeah.
And being like a major distractor of like, oh, I don't want to go. It's not gonna be good. It's not gonna be good. I think I came out of that theater the most excited of our friends when it was over because I was just so
nice
like
to have your expectations like not met but surpassed.
Yeah, it was good enough that I know I saw it twice that summer. So
Wow.
it was good enough that I did see it twice, and of course when it came out to buy, I like immediately got it. It was just a lot of fun. It came out of nowhere. I mean, I didn't expect to love it as much as I did, and all the pieces kind of. I mean, I know it's considered Johnny Depp show, but like honestly, everyone makes the
Shining
movie
here.
something.
Yeah,
makes the movie something special. I think.
I'm so glad we got these.
Yeah, I got and it's interesting too because like I'm glad you say you saw in that video, but I think for a certain generation that grew up with this, the first one especially. I mean, if you want to count the sequels too, of course you can, but I think that first one is like their Indiana Jones. I know that some movie people might be like, "Oh, you're comparing that to like something like Raiders of the Lost Ark or something,"
right.
but
yeah.
Why? I mean, if a new generation would probably be like, "Yeah, I like that more. That's fine. That's fine." Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark. So yeah,
I think it's the closest thing that like our generation would have to it in the sense of like
it's certainly not National Treasure.
no, it's right. Which I think Jerry Bruckheimer also produced.
He also produced.
Did a lot
yeah,
of
he did.
movies I found out today, but
yeah, he did.
Just in terms of like the massive global pop cultural resonance that like one movie character had in a series, I don't think we really even had since Indiana Jones until Jack Sparrow hopped on the scene.
Right. And I'm wondering like
in between.
And I'm like, do you have any now that like are as expressive as memorable as he is? I mean, I know you get like the John Wicks and stuff like that, and that's a fun character in its own right, but like I don't know if we've gotten anything like Captain Jack Sparrow in a very
since like at least 2007.
I could be totally wrong and say since like we'll just say the first three movies.
Right.
Hey, if we're wrong, point somebody out that like is just as iconic, and
nobody comes to mind for me at all.
Totally listen, and like I'm really trying. I'm trying to think of someone, and to be able to create a character like that, and like that character will live on forever. Like years 100%. From now, like you'll look at this movie and be like, oh, like however you might have felt about it, you'll be like, well, you mean that character stands out, that performance stands out.
Yeah, as
like that was something really special. And honestly, I agree with you too. Especially in the first two sequels, even though the surprise factor is gone because we already seen what he did in the first movie.
Right.
I think in some ways he does stuff to amplify it and like is having more fun with it and fully embraces it like wholly. And then I think all those around him are also like, all right, we get it too. Like let's play along. So yeah, I actually love what he does. I mean, by the time I saw the last few, which I don't even remember much about them, I think I was kind of done. I do remember Penelope Cruz is in the fourth one.
Yeah, and Javier Bardem's in the new one.
Javier Bardem's in the last one, yeah.
Ian McShane is in the fourth one with Penelope Cruz, yeah.
By the time we got to those two, I think I just like
they lost the charm.
It's weird, and it's weird because I wasn't like mentally checked out after the third. Like after as a whole, I think, and it's so weird looking at the reviews post this movie. None of them are fresh after this one on Rotten Tomatoes. They're all rotten.
None of them are. Wow, I hold the second and third dearly. I don't know.
So like, I remember thinking the first three, like the first one's great, and I don't think like the 2 and 3 touch it, but I think as a whole, as a cohesive like first three movies,
right?
I think they stand up pretty well with each other. So it wasn't like the third movie left a bad taste in my mouth. I don't know what it was by the time I got to the fourth one, where I was like, I feel like we didn't maybe need more of them at that point. It was done.
I agree.
Like
there's something
that it was just not fun.
Right.
Like and then knowing like, by the time Johnny Depp does that last one, he's also dealing with like the Amber Heard stuff is going on where they're filming it. Like there's a lot of like, you start to kind of experience the decline of Johnny Depp, which is so crazy to think. At one point after Pirates, he was in the Guinness Book of World Records as one of the highest paid actors of all time between a certain, like I forgot what year period it was after this, but he was making a fuck ton of money based off of these movies, getting a percentage of box office, which is always smart to do.
Yep.
And he was on a roll after this, and then like I don't think it's all the personal stuff. I think after a while, once your shtick becomes too popular, and it's like, oh, you're doing that thing again, people start to reject it because he also did the Lone Ranger for Disney, which was not good.
Right.
And
I never ended up seeing that.
You could tell another attempt at like, even though that character comes from the Lone Ranger TV series, it's like he was doing a lot to giving it a lot of Johnny Deppisms to make it like his own.
Yeah.
And by that time, it was kind of like, all right, we get what you're doing. And I think people started to kind of reject what he was doing after a while because it became so popular and became so like
kind of wore off.
Oh, he's doing something weird, like so it's unfortunate too because he is a really good actor. I mean, I kind of wonder. I mean, I guess he does look at his experience with this positive because he's told stories about going to visit kids in hospitals as Captain Jack Sparrow and them loving it. And I know that he likes that part of doing it. I just wonder if you ask Johnny Depp, like, did he enjoy being cult movie star Johnny Depp or mainstream movie star Johnny Depp? Which one did he like more?
I feel like I know.
I even though I love this movie and I love stuff that he did after this, I kind of like the space of cult movie star.
Yeah,
Johnny Depp more than mainstream.
I love what he brought us in his little dip in the mainstream, but yeah, no, cult movie star Johnny Depp is definitely the quintessential Johnny Depp, I would say.
Yeah,
but sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I love this fact. I don't know if it's a fact, if it would be the right word about it, but just this quote. Whenever I think about Johnny Depp, I think about Marlon Brando saying that Johnny Depp was the finest actor of his generation. I feel like that is just so true, even after all these years and ups and downs. Like, I don't think we've really had somebody like him, I guess, from his generation. I love that a living great like Marlon Brando recognized that before he'd gone and saw that talent in a young Johnny Depp. I just think that is just such a high honor to have been bestowed.
Because you're saying the stuff with Johnny Depp, like, there's roles where I feel like he should have gotten more. Like I said, Edward Scissorhands. He has the less showier part in What's Eating Gilbert Grape, but he's good. I mean, it's not like what Leonardo DiCaprio was doing, but he's good. He's good in that. I think he's good in Ed Wood, but Martin Landau also has a showier part in that movie. Over the top, eccentric, and Fear and Loathing, but still great in that.
One of my favorite movies.
Blow is still one of my favorite movies. I think he's really good in that.
I still gotta see that.
Like he was giving great performances before people started to really be like, oh, saw him in Pirates, and I guess if that needed to happen to like get him noticed by more people to appreciate his work, I guess I say fine, but at the time I remember like, hey guys, some of us knew about him before Disney picked him up. That's kind of how a lot of us felt at the time, but definitely changed his career in a huge way after the and quick. It wasn't like a slow turnaround. It was instant how this movie changed his career. Like he went from like completely out of that. Like he could pick anything he wanted.
I still find it so odd that he had been acting for 17 years before this role. It's just
and then he gets suddenly pick it. Then he can pick like, now he gets to pick the litter, like what he wants to do.
Just crazy. So weird to put into perspective. Because not having considered these things when I was 5 years old and looking at it now, it's like just you look at him in such a different light.
Yeah. Before we get to a few more fun facts or any final thoughts you have, or anything you want to mention about the movie that you didn't mention?
Yeah, only thing that I hadn't really got the chance to go into was like how far I'd say like Disney as a studio has strayed at the time.
I'm glad you brought that up.
This was gold. This was an era where they were making. Well, I'm sure they would. If like I didn't really look through their release filmography in relation to like the Pirates movies, but
what's crazy is that a few months later they released The Haunted Mansion.
Which is
also based on
an
attraction at
Disneyland as a kid. Honestly, I'm sure it doesn't hold up well though, does it?
I saw it in theaters. I remember at the time thinking that it would be just as good as Pirates because I felt like I get that chance. And man, this is what that's a prime example of like what happens. You got different filmmakers, different people doing it, different writers,
in a bottle.
But I think like Pirates stands out as like a good example of like what Disney can do when they kind of creatively use their IP. And not just because I feel like knowing that the whole we think this might flop was like permeating in the air. it feels like Disney didn't necessarily go like, oh, this is going to be a huge moneymaker. It seemed like this was made more because of this seems fun story, like whatever, more so than generate, more than like it being motivated by money.
Right. Gore Verbinski's enthusiasm for the role, I think, was a big, or not the role, the movie, the project was like a big motivator for the producers to see his vision through. I heard something about Jerry Bruckheimer being enthused at Gore's kind of like childlike enthusiasm for this movie, which I think was great. I think just like this is just an era from that studio and producers at the time, like again, like harkening back to Jerry Bruckheimer and what he brought to this movie that we will probably not see again, at least not from that studio, not in the regime that is running it now. The risks that are taken with this movie, like you said, not even just budget wise and the genre that it was being dead, but like just the tone, the rating of this movie, like you said, it was the first PG-13. I didn't realize that, but that is a huge has a lot of implications for that studio at the time.
Right.
The subject
another big gamble. Yeah, I mean, like everything was a gamble. It didn't really feel like it was motivated by like greed, which is what a lot of their stuff seems motivated by now.
This era of Disney is unrecognizable from the Disney we have now, and it's never been more apparent than when I was watching it today. And like, I'm very grateful that we had this era of them, because this movie is like just so special. And truly, I mean, if we had movies like this all the time, they wouldn't be as special. So I'm kind of grateful. But
well, I mean, yeah, it's interesting too, because like some people have brought up the whole like their live action remake stuff now, which has gotten out of hand.
Right.
But someone pointed out to me, they're like, well, if people don't want to see it, why did the live action Lion King make $1 billion? Why did the live action Aladdin make $1 billion? And like,
because that's when they were novel.
I was like, hey, but there's something to be said about familiarity, I think. And I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think they know that. So like, I think they also feel now they can do the bare minimum. And as long as you're familiar with it, you'll go see it. So yeah, granted, I was part of that. Like, I saw Aladdin in theaters. I had like my expectations were super low to the ground. It wasn't horrible. I thought it was decent, for what it was. The Lion King is because that's like my favorite animated movie. And John Favreau, he did some stuff and whatever. It's a movie. Just watch the animated movie instead.
Definitely.
Watching that, at least the live action Aladdin, there's stuff that felt different. So it kind of wasn't just there's like added scenes and stuff like that. The same thing what they did with The Little Mermaid. You know, that movie's 2 hours and some change. The original is 90 minutes. So they added stuff to kind of make it a little different. But yeah, that's what I have a love-hate relationship with Disney now, because it feels like it's partly they think about it's a company. I guess they have to think about the bottom line and dollar signs, but it's all kind of motivates their decisions now.
I think it came out. That is like where they put way too much stock in and priority.
Right.
Is it going to make the money? Is it going to be, rather than like, is this art going to have longevity or a lasting impact? And they think so much like a big greedy corporation, and that's how their movies come across these days more so than ever before. And I think they just stand in stark contrast to each other in the 2000s as they do in the 2010s and beyond, which is sad. But I mean, it's kind of like the cycle of studios, like, you know, different producers and regimes change over years. But this particular era of Disney was, I mean, not without its faults, but fantastic movies we got from them because of that. So
yeah, I agree.
What do you bring that up?
That's important, because I think it has changed dramatically since this movie came out, and maybe we saw hints of it around the time the movie came out. Definitely, I guess we saw hints of it as they sequelized the movie.
Fair enough. Yes,
but at least even then, I still we can say 90% chance that those sequels were motivated by money, but at least they felt like a cohesive piece of that first movie. They felt like they were, and
they expanded on the world.
So I will give the first two credit for that. Overall, I after I watched this one, it made me want to watch the other two, because
I'm going to. I can't just pop. I'm going to. I want to watch Dead Man's Chest so bad right now, because that's my favorite of the first three is Dead Man's Chest.
Oh, really? Oh, you had to drop that earlier in the conversation.
I know. Okay. I meant to, but one other thing that I wanted to bring up is like I compare the first three a lot to the Dark Knight trilogy for some reason, in the sense that like the first is like perfect for what it is. Could have been a great origin story standalone, but I feel like the second one expands on the world so much and does a great job at bringing in new characters and the same breath. I think the like Dead Man's Chest and Dark Knight both are so much more like bigger scale and more characters.
Right.
And honestly, I am a few years removed, so I think I'm going to at least rewatch the original trilogy, and I'll get back to you on which I think is the best. But I do think Dead Man's Chest is my favorite of the three, just like how Dark Knight's my favorite of the Dark Knight trilogy. So,
all right, Jackson coming in with the hot takes.
I know, I love him, man. I love this series so much. So
I didn't know this was like a favorite of your like this.
Oh yeah, I was like, overjoyed when just to have another reason to watch these again.
When they saw that it won, you're like,
yeah. I literally was giddy inside because it had been a few years, and
dude, you could have just picked it. We just would have done it.
I know, but there's only so many we can cover in a month, I'm glad we did Fruitvale Station, but there were so many other great options for everybody to choose from when we pitched this that I would have been happy with whatever, but very glad this is kind of how it went. But yeah, no, I'm a big fan of this series, and I'm sure there will be lots of other ones we cover that we might not know how the other person feels, like how much they really love it, but this would be one that I would like die for. I love pirates, so
that's awesome.
Very happy.
I'm learning something new every day.
100%. Like, but I think you were asking earlier what I was going to rate this movie. I think you got half that sentence.
Oh yeah.
I cut you off, but
no, they're good.
I think my enjoyment of this movie is a 10, but like just filmmaking, like craft wise, I'm giving it an 8.5. And there's not much I'd take away from this movie, but
I'll give it an 8.5 too.
Nice.
I felt very solid in that.
Like a very good happy 8.5.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try to fit in watching the other two because I'm kind of curious what I would give them now. I'm like, I've been like a little far removed for those two.
Right.
I would feel confident even like trying to give them a grade now, like based on like my memory from a few years ago. I don't want to.
Well, I'm the same. I'm thinking the same thing right now too. So I'd like to, give them their justice and watch them too. But that could be something. Maybe we'll just do a little like mini series and cover them. But
I know. Well, at least like it pop in the Blu-ray because I should just add a 4K Pirates to my cart on Amazon because I'm still like at least I own it, but like it's on DVD.
Yeah, all mine are on DVD too. I need to upgrade. I have a lot of DVDs, but yeah,
I do too. I never wanted to get rid of them. Everyone was like, "Why don't you just replace?" I was like, "No," because there's certain things I don't want.
Yeah.
Like,
what if the Blu-ray breaks one day?
Yeah. You never know what happens.
Yeah.
All right, some fun facts about Pirates of the Caribbean and the Curse of the Black Pearl. We already mentioned that everyone thought it was going to be a flop, but it was not. It opened at number 1, above Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines, grossing $46.6 million in its opening weekend and $70 million since its Wednesday launch. So it had one of those Dead Reckoning Wednesday Sunday launches, but actually worked in its favor because this is like in the middle of July and right around the holiday. So that was actually a smart way to open it. It was overtaken by Bad Boys 2 during its second weekend, but it still made $34 million in its second weekend, and it eventually made $305.4 million domestically and $654.2 million worldwide, becoming the 4th highest grossing film of 2003. Box Office Mojo estimates that the film sold over 50 million tickets in the U.S. when it opened.
Whoa, 50 million! Oh my God, at the time it had been like a 1/7 of the population of the states.
Want to go see this movie?
Yeah, that is crazy.
The film has an approval rating of 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, based on 220 reviews. Their consensus reads: "It may leave you exhausted like the theme park ride that inspired it. However, you'll have a good time when it's over." And I got an A cinema score from opening day audiences. Empire said it was the best blockbuster of the summer and one of the biggest surprises of the summer.
Can't argue with that.
And just about everyone praised Johnny Depp's performance as Captain Jack Sparrow. Pop Matters said it was ingenious and mesmerizing, and that Johnny Depp embodies the film's essential fantasy that's a pirate's life, is exciting and unfettered. Real Views applauded Depp's performance by saying Pirates of the Caribbean belongs to Depp. Take away Depp, and you're left with a derivative and dull motion picture.
A little harsh.
A little harsh. Roger Ebert, the guy with the thumbs, the late great Roger Ebert, liked the movie and acclaimed the performances of Depp and Rush, and particularly that It can be said that Depp's performance is original in its every atom. There has never been a pirate, or for that matter, a human being like this in any other movie. His behavior shows a lifetime of rehearsal. He did feel the film went on a little too long.
Okay, I mean, fair.
And then the LA Times said the movie spends far too much time on its huge supporting cast of pirates, nowhere near as entertaining as everyone assumes, and on bloated adventure set pieces, despite having also enjoyed Depp's performance. And then, but most of the response to it was very positive. Outside of Johnny Depp, the film received Academy Award nominations for Best Makeup, Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Visual Effects.
Yeah, a lot of technical ones. That's pretty sweet, and I think
a
they're
lot
all
of technical.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point this out because you were surprised by the Rotten Tomato scores for the sequels. So Dead Man's Chest. So the first one has an 80%, right?
Yep.
Dead Man's Chest has a 53%.
Wow.
I know. I was surprised. I was surprised it was that low too.
Holy.
At World's End has a 44%.
Jesus, like those are bad scores. I would say 53 is like middle of ground.
Right.
Very divisive, but wow, I'm so surprised.
On Stranger Tides, it gets worse.
At this point, I kind of lose faith in the series.
You cut out 33%.
Fair, deserving. The fourth is not good.
Then Dead Men Tell No Tales, probably somewhere in that range, has a 30%. So I honestly, my memory made me believe at least the first two were fresh. I did not know that the second and third were rotten.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think they're much better than those scores reflect. And I think so too. I've watched these in adulthood and I've thought the same thing, but it has been probably 5 years since I've seen the sequels. So I'm gonna give those another run, but I'm not expecting my opinion to change. I still hold. I could be biased. These were massive in my childhood, and I think there's probably nostalgia points I award to them. But
of course,
if they're anything like the first, I had a fucking blast watching these at 25. I thought they were there. It was phenomenal. So.
Some other fun facts. Tom Wilkinson was negotiated to play the part of Governor Witherby Swan, Elizabeth's father, that went to Jonathan Pryce. But he ultimately backed out. Brian Cox turned the role down as he didn't want to work with Johnny Depp. He has said some things about Johnny Depp over the years.
Really? Okay, Brian Cox would have been great.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know they had beef. But
the role went to Pryce because Depp idolized him. So he was very excited that he was going to be involved in the movie. Okay. Yeah, Brian Cox Brian Cox has always spoken his mind, but he has said some choice things about Johnny Depp, especially when Johnny Depp fell off. He felt the need to say a lot of choice things about Johnny Depp, but it's Brian Cox. Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl has a 8.1 out of 10 on IMDb, pretty high score. With movies like this, you think eventually they'll drop in the 7s or something, once the new generation sees it and doesn't think it's as good, but it stayed pretty high.
Nice.
Clothing and smears of charcoal were used to conceal Johnny Depp's numerous tattoos. The Jack Sparrow tattoo on his arm in the movie is a fake, but he got a real replica after finishing the film in honor of his son, Jack. Which is kind of cool. According to the screenwriter's commentary on the DVD, Will Turner is the best swordsman in the film. Barbossa and Commodore Norrington are evenly matched, and Jack Sparrow is actually the worst. Oh, that's hilarious. Johnny Depp wore contact lenses which served as sunglasses so he wouldn't be squinting in the sun all the time. Johnny Depp improvised Jack Sparrow's catchphrase, savvy.
I love when he drops that. It adds so much to his goofy character.
Yeah. Keira Knightley claimed she was so sure she was going to get fired after a few days of work on this film. She only packed a few things to go with her to start filming.
Okay. I wonder why.
The Pirates of the Caribbean franchise is the 10th highest grossing franchise ever.
That's impressive.
It is. That is impressive. I think the second one, it grossed $1 billion worldwide. I think was a huge financial improvement over the first movie. Let's see what else is there. We talked about that part. Originally, Johnny Depp wanted Jack Sparrow to have no nose and be afraid of silly things like pepper and common cold. Disney rejected that idea.
Probably for the best. I can only imagine all the wacky ideas he had for that character, but the ones that stuck are awesome.
Disney's they're already gonna think. Disney's already gonna think you're drunk and or gay, so we gotta figure you can't do that.
He is very flamboyant in that in this whole series, which I find hilarious.
When returning home from a night shoot on one of the Caribbean islands, Keira Knightley's boat struck a reef and went down. The only people aboard were Knightley, her mother, Charmin McDonald, and the boat's skipper, all of whom escaped unharmed and were rescued within a few hours. However, the incident ultimately determined that the rest of the island night shoots would be filmed in a studio rather than on location.
Okay, wow.
Oh, wow.
Odds.
Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio have said in interviews that they wrote the script in the early 90s. Somehow, Steven Spielberg got a hold of the script and wanted to direct the film with Bill Murray, Steve Martin, or Robin Williams playing Captain Jack Sparrow, but Disney did not give permission for the film to be made at that time. No.
Not a Spielberg property. No, I don't like him doing this. No. Too dark for him.
No. I mean, I guess he could do anything, but no.
He can, and he is the ultimate like family fun director. But like, I love what Gore Verbinski does with this movie, and I think that Steve probably would have injected too much of his like childlike charm into it, and not have gone as dark as this movie did. And I like how everything turned out.
Yeah, the movie was denied release in China because the film contained references to ghosts, the supernatural, and the afterlife. So no China release for the Pirates of the Caribbean.
That seems odd. I didn't know they would shit about that sort of thing.
The movie's world premiere was located at Disneyland Park at the Disneyland Resort in California, home to the original Pirates of the Caribbean attraction. On June 28, 2003, this was the first ever movie premiere at Disneyland, which I wish I could like remember how that played out. That night, because I wasn't paying at the time the movie premiered. I wasn't like paying attention to it until they hit theaters, and I was like, I don't.
Interesting.
Zoe Saldana said that she did not enjoy her time on this film. She said those weren't the right people for me. I'm not talking about the cast. The cast is great. I'm talking about the political stuff that went on behind closed doors. It was a lot of above the line versus below the line, extras versus actors, producers versus PAs. It was very elitist. I almost quit the business. I was 23 years old, and I was like, fuck this. I'm never putting myself in this situation again. People disrespected me because they look at my number on a call sheet and they think I'm not important. Fuck you.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, wow.
I honestly did not recognize her. And I know exactly who she is when you mentioned her, but
she like slaps him. Like, Anna Maria, I guess. Yeah.
I did not know.
Fun little moment. That's a fun moment in the movie, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can learn about the movie.
No shortage of trivia.
Especially if you have like the DVD, Blu-ray, Ultra 4K, which I guess had some complaints. Maybe I won't order it. I was just reading that when it says like on January 2022, The Curse of the Black Pearl was released on Ultra HD Blu-ray. However, the film's remaster was criticized by various online reviewers for being upscaled from 2K resolution, excessive application of digital noise reduction, and various other shortcomings. Maybe I won't get it. Maybe my DVD's just fine, or maybe I get a Blu-ray, I don't know. It feels weird not to have it on Blu-ray.
I know for sure,
at least,
but it still looks great on DVD, but I'm sure it would look better in Blu-ray.
Yeah. Well, you know what, guys? We will like to thank you for picking this one as your listeners' pick for our anniversary episode, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, which was first released on July 9th, 2003. Over 20 years old now. I know we did this one, and we realized we don't have to do the anniversaries right on the dot. You guys still seem to appreciate them. Especially if the movie is something like this. I mean, I think this movie is just beloved by everyone that kind of comes across it from the most part, which is why it was easy to see why it won in the poll. Close to Bad Boys 2. It was funny because they came out within the week. The second weekend was the weekend that Bad Boy 2 opened. Right. But I'm glad it was this one because I don't know when I would have rewatched it anytime soon. So I'm glad you guys picked this one. Like I said, we'll have a new set of 3 up for you guys to choose from to pick. In addition to us doing Halloween H2O, Freddy versus Jason, and the OC. Thankfully, those are very light. H2O is only 80-something minutes, so that's quick. Sweet. And I think Freddy versus Jason is in the 90, a little over that range. And you just have to watch the pilot for the OC, so you're good for that. Yeah. That's only like 45 minutes. Right. But yeah, we're very excited for the anniversary episodes. I am kind of glad that once August is done, it does slow a tiny bit because we really want to focus on doing the spooky season stuff. But like this anniversary stuff has been really fun and a really good run. I was just thinking about it today, like when you did your first one, I think it was In Bruges. Was the first one that you did for us.
Okay, yeah, I remember.
And then there was such a huge gap between us doing another one that I was like, oh, that's it did. And then now they're like back to back.
Pretty regular, yeah. Yeah.
But I guess, that's just, the release schedule of like summer stuff, 15, 20 years ago. But they're fun to do. I mean, and we get to do really different ones too. We went from Fruitvale Station to this, so
great. And it's awesome to like it gives you the chance to revisit stuff you haven't seen in a while, a la Curse of the Black Pearl, or like a lot of great first time watches for me. I don't know that we've covered an anniversary that you hadn't seen yet, but waiting for that day to come. That'll be the day. But I love it for me, just putting me on movies I hadn't seen yet, and there's not it's rare that I'll get like such an opportunity to watch it, because like kind of like you today saying you don't know when you would have gotten this watch in next. Like I couldn't tell you when I would have gotten around to seeing Fruitvale Station had we not covered it. So I really appreciate the anniversary episodes because of that. So they're great, and I'm looking forward to all the ones we have coming down the pipeline. So yeah, guys, make sure to vote. Let us know what you guys want us to cover on our next one, and you guys know where to look for that, of course. But I think that about sums it up, unless there's any other closing thoughts.
No, that was it. I mean, I was just glad that we had a fun one, man. This was like a really fun revisit. I kind of felt like a kid watching it. Like, so did I. It really has that sense of like fun, and you don't really, so many movies don't really have that anymore. I think
that's right.
Like this, and it was fun to recapture that even for a little bit. So yeah, thank guys for picking this one. This makes me trust what you'll pick next of the three we throw up there.
Yeah.
It'll be
100%. I'm very enthusiastic to see what you guys give us to cover next, because this was a great first start to letting the audience in on what we're going to cover. So great job, guys. We couldn't have done it without you. I'll be listening to the score before I go to bed. I know that for sure, because it was so awesome.
Yeah, so good.
But yeah, well, with that being said, this has been episode 114 of Back to the Blockbuster. Very excited to have covered Curse of the Black Pearl today and revisiting this series in general. I know it'll inspire my next few watches as I get Dead Man's Chest and At World's End in. I'm, again, feeling like a kid going through these movies again. They're so special, but very happy to have covered it today with you, Gaius. Guys, you guys know where to stream us now. Make sure you guys check us out on Playlist's new app, where we're very forecasted over there. And of course, stay tuned to our socials at Back to the Blockbuster. We'll be giving you some options for you guys to vote on for what we cover in our next anniversary episode. As always, feel free to shoot us a message anywhere on the socials too. If you have anything you'd like to contribute, we'd be happy to hear anything you guys have to say for us, positive or negative, because we like to hear what you guys have to say. And Gaius, thanks for having me on and covering this episode together. It was a blast, and I'll see you later this week.